China's southwestern province of Guizhou has spent decades investing in infrastructure with a goal to transform one of the country's poorest regions. Now, as new opportunities emerge in tourism and e-commerce, CNA's Tan Si-hui traveled there to see whether greater connectivity is delivering lasting change in the first of our two-part series on China's rural revitalization drive.
It's the world's highest bridge, rising 625 meters above the river below and stretching nearly 2.9 kilometers. Since opening last year, the Huajiang Gorge Bridge has become a symbol of Guizhou's decades-long effort to overcome its mountainous terrain.
Looking over the Huajiang Gorge Bridge, the sheer scale of the canyon below comes into view. And from this vantage point, you can really see how connectivity has changed what was once a remote and hard-to-reach region. Today, the bridge not only spans a canyon, it connects people to jobs, tourism, and new opportunities.
The bridge has cut travel times across the gorge, making nearby towns and villages easier to reach. This has been matched by better digital connectivity. China Mobile, working with Huawei, expanded 4G and 5G coverage to parts of Guizhou once difficult to serve. But rolling that out across the rugged karst landscape was not easy.
因为我们在设备搬运过程，还有基站的安装、调试、开通，都会面临着高风险。我们都是通过那个无人机调运的方式来进行调运的。
After years working in Yunnan province and elsewhere in Guizhou, 36-year-old Lin Guoquan returned to his village and opened a homestay near the new bridge. It has grown from 9 guest rooms to more than 50 in less than a year.
老板，你可以就是让我看你的民宿在哪儿？
就是你看，就是村子中间有一个游泳池那里，蓝色游泳池那里。是的。我们是一个很多楼围成一个院子。
然后网络覆盖之后，对你的生意有什么影响？
那是以前是电话都打不通的地方，以前想都不敢想的。就像这个网络通讯过来了之后，能够把全世界的那个客人吸引过来，就把我们这里传出去。然后这个桥通了之后，他从桥上到我们家只需要8分钟。
Nearby, Tianlong Tunpu village is turning culture into commerce. Known for its centuries-old stone architecture and traditional DC opera. Residents now live stream cultural performances, showcase traditional crafts, and sell local agricultural products online. Visitor numbers nearly tripled in the first 4 months of this year, compared with a year ago.
人均年收入就是还是提高了很多，因为以前的话，可以说咱们这边是农民比较居多，大家还是以农作物为主。那现在5G 互联网接入，那来旅游的人越来越多的之后了，大家其实也可以看到有更多的一个收入方式。
But observers say Guizhou's transformation goes beyond connectivity.
The combination of the public sector will, readiness of the private sector to provide the breakthrough technology, investment in the infrastructure. This is something that we can replicate in other national business systems.
Guizhou is also emerging as one of China's leading big data hubs. It became the first pilot zone to boost big data development in 2015.
It has essentially established the biggest data industry, data processing industry, and many companies have profited from it. The government see that as a starting point to attract more of the service industry that's targeting the manufacturing sector. I believe that the central government will continue to put more resources in the western region of China, but learning from Guizhou is a bit difficult.
But as China's economy slows, analysts say the next challenge is turning years of infrastructure investment into sustained economic growth.
Well, we've got reporter Si-hui herself joining us live now from Beijing, together with Krystal Chia in Shanghai. First to you, Si-hui. Now, both of you and Krystal, you guys did this two-part story on rural revitalization. And the thing is, we often associate rural China with aging population and, young people leaving for the cities. But somehow your stories show quite the opposite. So I'm curious to know what's driving this shift.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe before we go into what's driving that shift, we want to understand what rural revitalization is. It's quite a bit of a term. Sounds a bit lofty, but what it really is part of a goal for China to make villages more livable, to work, to live, and to play. It's really part of a poverty alleviation campaign in 2017, and the goal is to narrow that gap between the countryside as well as the cities. And that story that you just saw, I went to Guizhou. It is a perfect example of rural revitalization in action. We saw how Guizhou was previously a very poor province. You saw undulating mountains, mountaintops, and so it was really very hard to reach terrain. And so in the late 90s, we saw aggressive infrastructure, and in the 2010s, you can really see physical infrastructure being built, physical connectivity. And when I was there, I was at the world's highest bridge, the Huajiang Gorge Bridge. I was there on a high ropes course with many other tourists. Tourists also there to do many other activities. They were walking on transparent glass panels. There was also a cafe high up in the air. And so that really shows how these infrastructure has brought about tourism, jobs, high income, just like how the homestay owner, he had returned to his village because of the infrastructure connectivity that he saw being brought about by the bridges and the physical infrastructure. And then in 2015, we saw digital connectivity being improved as Chinese President Xi Jinping had encouraged AI industry-related activities and jobs being pushed. But really, what we want to see and what we want to hear from as well is Krystal, whose story will come out tomorrow at Yiwu Village. She went over there, Yiwu City rather, to Guizhou Village. I want to hear what is the conditions over there and what's the history of that village. Is it very much a similar story to mine?
So Yiwu is known as a manufacturing hub, but like your story as well, there is a village, Guizhou Village. The village has turned culture into commerce. So in the past, the village was poor. It was said to have dead-end prospects. Its remote location meant that people could hardly get to it. But that's all changed now. Half of its population is now below the age of 35. Now, these young people, they have moved to the village to start their own business. They are selling coffee, wine, and traditional crafts. But for me to really understand how the village has changed over the years, I needed to speak to an elderly resident, and I spoke to Mr. Fang, a retired teacher. Now, on the spur of the moment, we were walking around the village, and under the hot sun, I wanted to get a cup of iced coffee to cool down. So we walked into a random cafe, and he suddenly told me that that was his old home. Now, let's have a listen at what he has to say.
这里就是一个粉坑，那边是一个竹篮，这里呢是一个国灶，后来呢我们翻新过了，翻新过这里。 大学生，清华大学大学生下来创业了。我看了这个咖啡厅以后，跟以前比起来呀，相差远了。我想都想不到，装修的这么好，对吗？这都表明了青年人下乡来创业不容易，辛辛苦苦，他们也付出了多多少少的心血，才能够达到这个样子。难怪他们了不起。
Oh, that's certainly a very cozy-looking cafe. These are certainly encouraging stories. But Sihui, I'm sure there are challenges, right? I mean, that still remain. If, say, these places want to sustain this momentum of getting young people to, come back and work, for instance.
And most definitely for Guizhou, the infrastructure, physical infrastructure as well as the digital infrastructure, well, they cost a lot of money. In fact, Guizhou has become one of China's most indebted regions. Outstanding debt in 2024 accounted for more than 70% of the region's GDP. So there are a lot of questions about whether the region can move beyond infrastructure-led growth to become financially sustainable. And analysts say transformation for now still look sustainable as Chinese industries are still moving up the value chain. But new industries like data centers, as I had mentioned earlier, they don't create as many jobs as labor-intensive industries like coal mining, which Guizhou had traditionally relied on. And so experts say new markets are required to ensure that there is a creation of a sustainable model. Let's take a listen.
With more resources dumped into those high-tech AI-related industry for other areas related to, say, social welfare or consumer-facing services, they are lagging behind. They can't rely on the central government for all those fiscal support. So the model would only be sustainable if China could improve domestic demand.
Analysts say there is unlikely to be any kind of policy change in the next 2 to 3 years, as the priority is still on AI and manufacturing. So, Krystal, are the challenges also similar as to what I had heard from in Guizhou over at where you were at in Yiwu City?
So the opportunities and the challenges for villagers across China, they are largely the same. So I spoke to a professor at Fudan University. He has been to countless number of villages in the past 7 years, and these are the challenges that he told me. Now, firstly, in villages, unlike cities, there are often unwritten informal rules. What's yours, what's mine, what's ours, and what's shared. And that means that policymakers would have to make sure that income derived from shared spaces have to be shared across the village residents equally. Now, secondly, he also warned against villagers cannibalizing each other. For example, villagers should make sure that they are not pushing out the same product or the same idea. Because if that happens, any potential profits from visitors, they would be dispersed and nobody stands to gain from that. Now, to conclude our chat, tens of thousands of villages across China are set to be upgraded. But these villagers, like you said, would have to know and learn how to operate on their own. There's only so much that the government can do, or in fact should do. So I'm sure for both Sihui and myself, we would be looking out from Beijing and Shanghai, looking across the country, continuing to examine the sustainability of China's rural renewal strategies. Oteli?
I certainly look forward to part 2 of this China rural revitalization from Krystal tomorrow. Thanks so very much to our China correspondents, Krystal Chia in Shanghai and Tan Sihui in Beijing.